He's a no second chances kind of man with a companion who has something on her back. No, we don't mean David Tennant and Catherine Tate. Today, an Unearthly podcast discusses John Pertwee and Elizabeth Sladen in Planet of the Spiders, written by Robert Sloman and Barry Letts. Tashi Dele. Welcome one and all to the 44th production of an Unearthly podcast, featuring Planet of the Spiders and recording on February 2nd, 2014. I am the Man in Black, and with me are Mad Matt.
Hello.
And Ron San.
Always a pleasure.
Didn't mean to
and technically, it's still February 1st.
Yes it is. I think I wrote that unsure of what day we were going to actually be doing it.
It'll probably be the second by the time we're done, though.
Yeah, by the time this is on YouTube, it will be.
Hopefully, we don't get caught in a Groundhog Day loop and have to keep making this podcast over and over and over again.
If we have to keep making this podcast over and over again, I'm going to have to kill somebody.
It'll just get longer and longer every time.
I'll have time to watch it without having to breeze through it.
Right. An Unearthly podcast can be followed on twitch.tv/madmat2185, youtube.com/madmadinc1, facebook.com/unearthlypodcast, twitter.com/unearthlypod, and recently on insomniatic.co.uk, as well as various other blogs.
Cootie.
And,
wow, we actually have a presence in the UK now.
It's
interesting.
.com was taken, so I went
still
with
the co.uk is a United Kingdom address.
It is, but it's the secondary URL for a US .net site. I just couldn't use .net or .com with that URL.
It's still UK. It's still hosted in the Britons.
Hmm. So for news this week, we actually have something a little bit mainstream attention. That is that the 12th Doctor's costume has finally been revealed.
And reviews on it are mixed.
Yes, I believe it was the Daily Mail wrote this kind of random rant about pockets and buttoned buttons on the top without a tie, and
well, it is.
I think they might have been drinking while they wrote it.
It is kind of the now. What they're talking about is the fact that the undershirt, he has it buttoned all the way up his neck.
Yes, I understand that, but that's a one sentence thing. But it tipped off into this entire rant about fashion, and it altogether just seemed to me like the writer was drinking and saw the costume and had to spill everything that came through his or her mind.
Just to come up with something to try and post something negative, and well, I don't expect much else from that particular newspaper anyways.
No, this is true.
Yeah, other sites seem to be a little more up about the outfit. It is very Third Doctor in its appearance.
It's very Third Doctor, and it's also very similar to an outfit that the Master wore, I believe, at some point in Series 3, or at least the code itself.
Maybe, but I think he was imitating the Third Doctor. But yeah, the black coat with the red lining, and yeah, that's very Third Doctor in its style.
And the V-neck and the
Yeah, all he's missing is
the frill in the arm around the
I,
hand. Yeah.
I do find it amusing that Peter Capaldi refers to this as the no nonsense, no frills outfit, whereas what else is a black coat with red lining other than flash and frills?
Yeah, it
But
is a little Flash, but he at least doesn't have the ruffles.
true,
Yeah,
and
they did eliminate the ruffles.
as he mentions in some of his quotes, no neckwear whatsoever. Which I think I'm trying to think if any doctor other than Eccleston
Did that?
can make that claim.
Peter Davidson might.
Peter Davison, yeah.
That's
Peter
right.
Davison for a very long time did not have.
He just had a V-neck, was it, or did he actually?
Yeah,
have
well, he had the
He just had
cricketer's
collared
outfit.
neck.
Yeah, he just had a vest with the collared shirt. Yeah, and the
Okay.
collar's turned way up and starched,
At some point.
so that you could see the question marks on them.
Of course.
But no, there was no neckwear with that. The first Doctor wore neckwear. The second Doctor wore sloppy neckwear. The third Doctor occasionally wore neckwear. He frequently had a bow tie.
But most often had frills, which came down.
Most often had frills. The fourth Doctor didn't have neckwear
I think
either.
the third also wear ascots and such as well, right?
I think technically, though, Randy, the fourth Doctor can claim that scarf is neckwear.
The fourth had a very famous piece of neckwear.
I'm talking about ties.
True, but
because
the actual Capaldi quote includes him referencing scarves, so I'm counting that as part of.
Okay, I didn't know the actual quote had him referencing scarves.
Yeah, he was referencing scarves.
Yeah, because the seventh also had a scarf. The sixth had that atrocious 19th century neck piece. Did eighth have a neckwear? I know he didn't in the last bit, but I don't know if he had one in his original.
He might have.
I'm not sure what it was called. I'm thinking it was something like an ascot except frillier.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was actually it would have.
I think he had something, but I can't quite remember what it was. And my headset is falling off. There.
And then, of course, 10 tended to have his designer ties, and 11 had his bow ties.
Oh, 9 didn't have anything. He had this.
No, that's right. That's the first one I had mentioned before. Was that Eccleston could definitely make the same claim. I hadn't thought about Davison.
Yeah, Davidson, Eccleston, arguably Baker if you exclude the scarf.
Yeah, I'm sure he had on and off something else underneath there, but.
And seventh only had the small scarf, so.
Okay.
It was he almost wore a kerchief. I don't think he had neckwear. He might have had a tie under there.
I thought he had a suit and tie at the very least in his third outfit. I'm not sure about
eighth. Did have a neck wrap of some kind.
Oh, I'm saying this, but part of our second piece of news includes a link. If anyone has that open, there's a link on it that shows all of the Doctor costumes. That's part of what I was going to mention. Of course, my computer that's fast does not have that link on it. Let's see if I can.
Second piece of news, what?
Which is
Doctor's costumes.
Yeah. There's a vote on your favorite Doctor's costume.
Which is very interesting because considering all of the huge amounts of 11th Doctor specific fans that are all bow ties or cool all over the place, the other Doctor that is, the Doctor that inspired Matt Smith's costume, I think has the lowest percentage of vote.
Second Doctor, he has a tie. Third Doctor has a tie in this one.
Is it only? Yeah, it's only the first 7 Doctors that you're voting on.
It's the first 7, yes.
Oh, which Doctor would actually be my favorite?
It's like picking your children.
Well,
I think I have to go with.
I think I
have to go with Baker because I really like that London Fog.
Actually, they're showing a photo from the 5-ish Doctors reboot, and Sylvester McCoy with
wearing a necktie.
Yeah, with his first costume, he's wearing a regular necktie.
Yeah. And also,
does celery count as neckwear?
The 8th Doctor, and he has that thing around his neck. Also,
Yeah,
the
it's
War
a
Doctor
lapel
has
pin.
a
It doesn't have
small
the count.
scarf around his neck.
What's that?
The War Doctor has a small scarf around his neck. It's kind of trapped in between the layers, but he does have one.
How many times do you think Colin Baker's had to take that suit out? Because he's definitely rounder now than he was when he played the role.
True.
Even Davidson's a little paunchier, but not anywhere near Colin.
Even especially that photo on bbc.co.uk/Doctor Who is not flattering for McCoy either.
Yeah,
looks like he's inflated.
Well, he's kind of puffing himself out self-importantly.
He is, but just that photo is not flattering. Like it just looks like someone just put a balloon inside him and just blew it up. But as of the results so far, well ahead, and at this point probably with no chance of losing. The Fourth Doctor has 47%, which I think might be more people liking the Doctor than specifically his outfit.
No, I like. Well, it's the scarf is so iconic.
Yeah, it's the scarf.
That might be it. Yeah, I'm like, I like it, but I would not consider it my favorite.
I used to have one.
Although I would not be.
I used to have a London fog coat too, warm around all the time.
I don't have a scarf exactly like any of his, but I do have an extremely large scarf.
And if I'd had the ability to get them at the time, I probably would have had jelly babies in my pockets. I'd just walk around to people randomly and ask them if they'd like a jelly baby.
I'm thinking for the next Star Wars celebration, I might go as a Doctor with a pocket full of jelly babies. Anyway, in second place is the Third Doctor with 14%.
Yeah, well, his was one of the most... Yes, all the thrills and ruffles.
Yeah.
Okay, who's next?
It's nipping at his heels is the Fifth Doctor with 13.
Another appearance that was very good. Technically, the Fourth Doctor should be on there twice. One for his his first 5 seasons.
Yeah, they're two very different costumes as compared to the others, which were variation on a single theme. Mm-hmm. Fourth place was my personal vote, which was the Seventh Doctor. Then you have.
I don't know. I really hated that question mark jumper.
I don't know. I like
it too
for some reason. I just like it for some reason.
Okay. So who's behind the Seventh?
Next with 6% is tied the First and Sixth Doctors.
Ouch.
And then in dead last is the Second Doctor with 4%. And I think what you said about Baker kind of hits it on the Sixth Doctor. It's an eyesore, but it's damned iconic. You cannot see that coat and not know what it's about.
Yeah.
If you see that coat, you know that's the Doctor.
Yeah, and I saw that coat. I saw that coat very recently too. Well, in November, when I went to go see Day of the Doctor at the theaters, someone was wearing that coat, and it's like, oh look, we got a Sixth Doctor in front of us. He had the hair for it too.
Nice.
Oh, okay, here we are. For some reason, I wasn't seeing where the weekly vote was.
I kept trying to vote, and it kept saying, due to technical difficulties, we cannot process your vote.
Went through for me.
Who'd you vote for?
Second Doctor. Because bow ties were cool in the 60s.
Yeah, I'm like, honestly, the most shocking thing about that poll to me is the fact that
Second Doctor is so
bow ties are cool fans did not flock to the Second Doctor.
Must be something with my browser.
Maybe. What browser do you use?
Firefox.
I do too. I was able to.
I stopped Firefox because I had lots of bad blood with it.
It's slowing down for me. I might have to get rid of it. I don't want to, but I might have to.
I tried using Chrome, and Chrome just does not have the feature I want on it.
Which is?
The ability to have that pull-down browser, or that pull-down search engine in the upper right-hand corner.
Yeah.
Because all of my wikis are on that.
Yeah.
All 50 of my wikis are on that.
Ah, yes. Our next piece of news is probably going to be big news for fans of one Doctor, or maybe two of them, and is probably going to be no news for a good number of people as well. And that is that Big Finish has announced Series 1 of the Charlotte Pollard line. For those not familiar
Charlie's
with this,
getting her own line.
yep. For those not familiar with this particular companion, we have done a couple of her adventures on this podcast. She started off as the first Big Finish companion for the Eighth Doctor, and after going through that run, she became a Sixth Doctor companion before finally ending her run with the Doctor. So now she's going on, like Bernice Summerfield, to have her own line of audio adventures.
That's going to be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since she kind of is not supposed to exist anymore. She is, I mean, literally.
Wobbledy.
Well, no, I mean, literally, she's somebody who can't go home again. According to history, she died on the R101.
Still doesn't mean she can't have adventures of her own.
I'm wondering how. I mean, I'm kind of wondering how they're going to do it.
Do you know how the Sixth Doctor run with Charlie ended? Because I don't.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I do not know how the Sixth Doctor run with Charlie ended. Last I heard, she was still keeping the secret that she was a companion to a later him under her hat, so...
I'm probably going to look it up after the cast, but to avoid spoiling everybody listening, if you want to look it up, do the same thing. If not, either listen to the stories or don't. The Charlie line is available for pre-order if anyone wants to is interested in going ahead for that.
But there's something else on this page, I believe? Or was that it?
That's it that I know of.
I thought you mentioned two things when I saw the link earlier, but okay.
You might be thinking the first link had the two things. That was the costume and the pole.
Odd, I could have sworn it was this. Oh well. Okay, moving on.
Okay. Next we have Adventure in Space and Time has a soundtrack album coming out. Did we discuss? Was it soundtrack? Were we discussing soundtracks on the last podcast, or is that something we just discussed between the three of us?
I do not recall. I know I mentioned it. I've mentioned it in a podcast.
Oh no, we did mention it in the podcast because we were talking about how the incidental music was incidental in the War Games, I believe.
Yeah,
and about how soundtracks
how
have kind of blown up over the past decade or two. So, to further prove that you can pretty much market any soundtrack, the docudrama about the first Doctor's run is having its own soundtrack come out.
Who composed it, I wonder?
Formed by the Chamber Orchestra of London.
Okay.
Composed by Edmund Butt.
Okay, so it's not your usual Doctor Who composer. It's not Murray Gold. It's not anybody who used to be part of the radiophonic workshop.
I think Murray Gold was working on Day and Time of the Doctor when this was being composed.
Yeah, but it's also, you almost would have expected somebody from the old radiophonic workshop to have put their hand into it.
True.
They recorded it at Abbey Road. Typical.
Anything else you want to say about that? Anybody?
No, I don't have anything. I don't have anything particular about it. I don't remember that particular soundtrack striking me as memorable.
Right. Yeah. I'm like any music I remember from it was from the actual first Doctor run. So, I mean, I'm sure there was probably some mood music that was intended to blend in with the scene and whatever. But I can't really think of anything off the top of my head.
Yeah, it's kind of non-existent to me.
None of these links want to open up now that I'm actually talking about them, so I can't see what I'm talking about. So our next piece of news is that the Silence in the Library script is up for auction to raise funds for the National Literary Trust.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any... oh, there we go. Now it loads. It's a copy of the shooting script, so I'm not sure if they say specifically who it was. Oh, okay. It was used by actors Steve Pemberton, who played Strachman Lux, which is a name I'd have to look up, in Silence of the Library. So this is the script that he used to shoot his scenes. The script is dated January 11th, 2008, and is signed by the actor. If you want to bid on it, you can bid at nlt-auction.com/auction/lot.php ? ID equals 22. Current bid £500.
Jeez. He was one of the. I think he might have been the first crew member to die in that
Probably.
particular story. He's a balding man in the white suit.
The literary trust where the proceeds are going to, they work to improve the reading, writing, speaking, and listening skills in UK's disadvantaged communities, where up to 40% of people have literacy problems. So this is essentially going toward the same cause as the what do they call that line of books? Was it short reads or something like that, or was that something else? Randy probably knows what I'm talking about.
I'm not sure off the top of my head.
I don't really follow most.
I don't follow it closely either. That's the problem. There was a book line launched around the beginning of the 10th Doctor era, I believe. That was essentially for
You mean
that were not
the Doctor
fully-
Who novels?
the line of novels.
I mean the specialty novels, yeah.
Yeah, they were
I
intended for
can't
those
remember.
that are not fully literate or were learning to read and such,
Or were just younger.
or also younger audiences as well. But they were kind of pushing because they already had, I think, children's ones as well happening at the time.
Yeah, I don't really follow most fundraisers, so I really don't know much
Well,
about them.
that
but
one wasn't a
apparently
fundraiser.
it
That
sounds
was
like a really good thing.
novels
So
intended to
you
increase
know.
literacy.
hopefully it does well.
Yep. So if you have, if you're a huge fan of this episode or the character or the actor, or you just want to raise money toward the cause, and you have more than £500 available, which is somewhere in the range of about $800, you can go there and bid on it.
You know, it's gonna bother me. I have to look it up now.
Okay. While Randy's looking into that, I'll go on to our next piece of news, and that is that the Radio Times is holding a poll to select one of. You can select up to 3, but one of 10 British television shows will be mentioned in the Captain America sequel, The Winter Soldier, which is coming out in April. And the Radio Times, I guess it's coming down to them to decide what one it will be, which they are doing through a user vote. At the moment, Sherlock and Doctor Who have a clear lead over everything else. Sherlock is 1% ahead of Doctor Who.
Really?
So,
I've got 5%.
let me see if I can get into it again. It was like 43 and 44 when I last looked at it, but I hate multiple. Actually, no, I can view the results without voting again. Okay, you're right. It's a 5% lead now. I think that lead might have increased since I last looked at it.
Because it's 39 and 34, and we cannot have Sherlock beat Doctor Who on this, people.
And I
Come
think
on,
part of
vote.
the reason, I think part of the reason is that every Doctor Who fan that's choosing more than one is
also
choosing
choosing
Sherlock as their
Sherlock.
second choice.
And then we've got the people that are just choosing Sherlock because it's Sherlock.
Right. So here's the deal. Either Sherlock or Doctor Who will win, which means if you want Doctor Who to win, you don't need to vote Sherlock to give Sherlock a chance. So just vote Doctor Who if you want Doctor Who to win.
Yeah, exactly. Because to me, nothing says British television more than Doctor Who.
The other choices that I have never watched are Father Ted,
Which I've
Faulty
never heard of.
Towers,
Which I have
Downton
heard of.
Abbey,
Heard of it?
Heard of it?
Mrs. Brown's Boys,
Never heard of it.
No, I haven't.
The X
No, I
Heard
have
of it,
not.
but prefer to stay away from it.
Coronation Street, which we've heard of.
I I've heard of Big Brother, which of
and
course we've
Big
heard of.
Brother, which has appeared on Doctor Who. I
And
Mhm.
we've
wasn't
heard of,
there.
but we prefer to
So
stay away from.
Big Brother still exists then.
Apparently.
Apparently, I think that they just do celebrity ones now.
Aha.
Because that's the only way they can keep it going. Let's watch these idiots.
Kind of meta Big Brother with Christopher Eccleston, John Barrowman, and Billy Piper.
Are you kidding? I would love to see Big Brother with all the doctors
Oh,
in the house.
and I'm
I
sorry,
would watch that.
I didn't scroll far enough down, and then the last one is The Only Way is Essex,
Which is thus far has 0%.
which has 0% of the vote, and I've never heard of it.
Yep, never heard of it.
Yeah. I cannot find the name of that book series, so
Hmm. Well, I think we're
I know
done
what
with
you're
news.
talking about. I remember seeing it on the BBC website, but
Quick reads. There we go.
quick reads. Okay. Yeah, I think I might have seen those at like they came out here too because I think I remember seeing a couple of those in like a Barnes and Noble or a Borders or something.
They are still coming out because when I Google it, the first result is one that came out in 2013. So they are still coming.
Okay. Yeah, I think I remember seeing them at like a or like I said, a Borders or a Barnes and Noble or something.
Makes sense.
So, on to our feature
And
then.
and that's it for the news.
Mm-hmm.
Is
So
anybody
yes, now we go
interested
to
in synopsis?
One at a time, please.
Oh, he was asking who wants to do the synopsis.
Oh.
You watched it last, I believe, Matt.
More or less, yes. I watched it a few years back, and I essentially speedrunned through it today because been gone all day. Still wanted to see if we could get this going.
So you don't want to do a synopsis either.
I could if you want me to. I do get the general gist of the plot, and I can sum it up pretty quickly, I would think.
Yes, actually, you can almost sum it up in a minute or less. I swear. But yeah,
Technically, yeah, you could probably almost sum it up in a couple minutes.
you would miss a lot of the details that we'll be talking about if you did. But
It's really the human stuff that I would need to hear a synopsis on because I mean maybe it's just that when everybody is a
What's
white
so
male.
hard about the human stuff? I have to
yeah,
ask.
I wasn't sure where you were getting lost there, Bill.
It's also the fact that I'm just terrible with faces, so all I see is just a bunch of white males reappearing over and over throughout the episodes and not really sure what they're doing or why.
Okay, synopsis. Should I just go ahead, or do you want to, Matt?
You can go ahead.
Okay. So Mike Yates on vacation after being discharged from unit after siding with the bad guys in a previous serial, basically is at a monastery in England where he's trying to sort himself out. But he discovers something kind of hinky going on in the cellar. Apparently, a bunch of people there are chanting and doing some kind of summoning. Calls in Sarah Jane Smith, who basically begins to do a investigative report on the monastery. While they're there, the group does the summoning, and they sneak in and manage to see it summon a spider. At the same time, the Doctor is also doing research on psychics. He has gotten a psychic into his lab and has him hooked up to various machines when he receives a package from a previous companion, Joe Grant. The package contains a crystal from Metebelis Free, which he got in the episode The Green Death. While he's reading the letter to Sergeant Benton and the Brigadier, his psychic picks up the crystal, looks at it, screams, and causes a massive psychic backlash. The Doctor pulls the crystal away from the psychic, and he's dead. Having one of the devices being a recorder for his memories, they flash back and see that he was thinking of spiders. It's only later when Sarah mentions that she saw a spider in there that the doctor gets interested in what's going on at this facility. Unfortunately, at the same time, the one of the people from the monastery has been possessed by one of the spiders, at least partially. It seems to be kind of a co-op thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they home in on the crystal and steal it. The doctor and Sarah race back to the monastery to accuse this guy, but he's already in the cellar summoning a way to transfer to the spider's homeworld. Sarah steps onto his chanting mandala right when he does and winds up on the planet Metabolus 3, where she discovers that basically the eight legs, as they refer to themselves, live in power over the two legs, meaning humans. While she's there, she manages to witness a guy accused of beating up a guard, and his father taking his place to be basically executed or eaten, as it were. And unfortunately, she's seen. But the doctor, chasing after Sarah Jane in the TARDIS, manages to interfere, and well, crap happens. The doctor is thought dead after a nice little fight scene, and Sarah is hidden by the rest of the villagers. The doctor is semi-conscious and murmurs the fact that he needs a machine that's in the TARDIS. Sarah goes to get it, but is captured by the guy that was co-opting with the spider. I forget his name. I don't know. He's Lupton. That was it.
Lupton, yes.
He's a bit of an ass. Anyway, and she's taken off to be Spider Chow. One of the other villagers gets the gall up to get the machine that was left at the floor of the TARDIS, and the doctor uses it to draw the energy out of himself and recovers by the next morning, where he intends to go rescue Sarah. He promptly goes into the spider's lair after discovering rocks that are immune to this effect and giving them to the villagers. He goes in and is promptly captured by the bad guys after they knock his machine out of his hand. Both him and Sarah are in the spider's larder. Sarah's hauled off, where she winds up making a deal with the queen of the spiders, and the doctor manages to escape using a trick he learned from Houdini. However, the doctor gets lost and winds up in the lair of the Great One, the biggest of all spiders, and he is compelled to return this crystal to her, or basically the doctor feels fear for the amount of control that the Great One has. Fleeing, he runs into Sarah, and she winds up teleporting them both to the TARDIS, where they return to Earth. And it's only then that it's discovered that basically Sarah has the Queen on her back. After a bit, they managed to find the crystal, which had been stolen, lost, found by an idiot who becomes a not idiot, and then return to the what was it, abbot, or
Try going
the senior monk.
Yeah, I think it was the abbot that they finally.
Yeah, I think they called him the abbot. Yeah, Kempo.
Might be.
But by this point, the spiders are coming over en masse. They take over a good chunk of the people that were chanting in the circle, and launch an all-out assault on the abbot's quarters, barely being held off at the time. But by the time they break through, the doctor manages to vanish again with the crystal, taking it back to Metabolus 3, where he has to basically face his fear. The abbot is killed and is shown to be a Time Lord. In fact, one the doctor knows. He then regenerates into the other monk there, who turned out to be an actual projection of the abbot himself, of his future self. Bit confusing there. But the doctor goes back to Metabolus 3, returns the crystal to the Great One in her big cave of massive radiation, apparently, The Great One wants this crystal to complete the psychic web, which backlashes on her and fries her brain, and the Doctor staggers back into the TARDIS, back to Unit, where he collapses and thus regenerates into the Fourth Doctor. End of episode. Ugh.
Yep.
I think I forgot to mention that during in there the humans revolt too.
The humans revolt and fail.
Humans revolt, they fail, and at the end, when the mastermind giant spider tries to take over, they are let go again and run for the hills, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot going on.
I'm pretty sure at the end he lets the Great One kills herself by her own stupidity, and then he just lets society devolve into chaos while he regenerates.
The backlash from the Great One dying killed all the other spiders.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it killed all of them or just
it killed them.
Weakened them.
Yeah,
greatly.
They fell over dead.
Yeah, a lot of them were falling over dead and stuff.
So at the end there was just the humans. So therefore there wasn't really societal chaos.
Yeah, genocide.
Yeah, but
it's spiders.
Yeah, but it wasn't really the Doctor's fault. Sure. This time it was not the Doctor's fault. He did not commit genocide. Really, the Great One kind of committed racial suicide.
In short, way to go, 8 eyes.
Mm-hmm. Actually, 8 legs,
8
many
legs too,
eyes.
I believe they have something like 8
okay.
eyes.
A real spider does have 8 eyes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Does it have 8 eyes, or does it have a segmented eye?
The movies about giant spiders have 1,000,000 eyes, according to the title.
Yeah, I thought it had one of. I thought they had those segmented eyes.
Depends on
growing up as a Spider-Man fan, I saw in several sources that they had 8 eyes. It might be different species. Like I know wolf spiders definitely have 8 eyes. Some species might have segmented eyes.
Yeah, it really depends.
But
on
I believe
the
8 eyes is I believe 8 eyes is common, if not universal.
Mm-hmm. I think
They're usually shown. They're usually animated with 2 eyes, which is generally not right. But
except for very rare species. But yeah,
no.
That's another story.
Okay, it's very hard to tell because they have 8 things that look like eyes, but some of them are thought to be compound eyes, so they can't tell.
mm-hmm.
Not entirely sure, but they look like 8 different eyes.
I know that man spider definitely had 8 eyes.
And something named man spider is totally something to base fact off of.
Well, man spider is what Spider-Man turned into when his mutation became unstable. Which makes me sound like
from the 90s.
Yeah, I remember the 90s cartoon.
I'm kind of wondering if that was right around the time of the Red Sky years and Ninja Turtles, because that would make sense.
I don't know. I don't know. I think that was a bit after the Red Sky years of Ninja Turtles.
I do remember spending a lot of time when I was like 14. Back when it took me an hour or so to go to sleep, sitting in bed wondering how the hell Baxter Stockman could see without going insane.
And again, going on a tangent.
Yeah, we're talking about eyes. So now we're talking about the episode itself.
Now, one thing I want to mention about this, it's Sarah Jane, especially in this. I mean, this isn't the only episode like this, but it's very interesting looking at her as a companion because it's clear the Doctor would not mind her being a mindless, young, companion who he's always rescuing and doesn't have anything to contribute, and he would be okay with that. Especially in this, at least in this episode, whereas it's very clear that Sarah Jane herself very much holds herself to a much higher standard and is rather annoyed anytime that she is not able to live up to her own standards.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because this is kind of Sarah Jane in her prime.
Starting to build up into her prime, yes.
No, this is it in her prime because it kind of goes downhill once the Fourth Doctor era starts.
Yeah, because eventually it becomes more about Tom Baker than about who Sarah Jane is as a character.
Yeah, this is, I think, the last time.
She becomes the Doctor's friend, and that's pretty much about it in the end.
Yeah, this is the last time we see Sarah Jane, investigative reporter, until Canine and Company,
Right.
which is 7 years from now, 8 years from now.
I'm not sure when that came out, honestly.
82, 83. It was somewhere around the end of the Fourth Doctor era, beginning of the Fifth Doctor era. Somewhere in there.
So ratings started to decline, and the thing that they thought would be best for Doctor Who was to compete with it with another Doctor Who spin-off.
Well, the thing is that the character of K9 and the character of Sarah Jane were both very well loved. And so they decided to try to do a spin-off with them.
That's the thing. They were probably more popular with the audience at the time than the new Doctor, just because of who they were.
And then they basically commissioned that as a pilot for a series. The BBC looked at the pilot and said, "We're not putting our money behind this. It sucks." So they used it as a Christmas special.
And then they canonized it in The Five Doctors.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Because Sarah Jane had K9 by then. So, yeah, it was pretty much, canonized. I do remember for years wondering where the hell Sarah Jane got a K9.
Because you never saw that special.
Whereas I was introduced to Sarah Jane via school reunion, so for all I knew, she always had it.
Yep, and I knew better than that because I had seen her in
like
Tom Baker's first season, and Pertwee's that, and then I saw her in The Five Doctors, and I'm like, where the hell did she get a K9? He didn't even get K9 until the companion afterwards.
I think one of my early downloads, I'll admit that I watched a lot of old stuff and got rid of it as I watched it. And I remember actually my big Doctor Who download back in the day actually did have K9 Friends as part of the listing.
K9 and Company.
Company.
Yeah, I think I remember bringing it to one of the Anime Club's
Craptaculars. It fell in, but I do know that it fell in somewhere between seasons. And so I did see it, so I did know where K9 came from. And I saw that, I think, I'm not sure how soon before it, but I do know I remember seeing that before the second season of the current Doctor Who.
I remember bringing it to one of the Anime Club's Craptaculars, Matt. Because it was worthy of being crap. It was a horrible, horrible... The novelization didn't make it any better.
Did it make it less dry?
Because, not really.
God.
Yeah,
as for Sarah Jane and the Doctor, so we don't get too far off. It's like, I know people have talked about. I haven't seen her first appearance, but I know it's been mentioned a few times that the Doctor does at times come off kind of sexist, especially in light of how much of a feminist icon Sarah Jane is kind of built up to be, and you can kind of see that here, where Sarah Jane is like, "This is important," and the Doctor's like, "Yeah, whatever. Wait, Spider. Okay, start again from the beginning. What you were telling me 30 minutes ago."
It wasn't really supposed to be that. It was supposed to be that he was so engrossed in the crystal.
Oh no, I mean, and I can see it both. I mean, I'm just having heard that as a criticism leveled against this particular pairing before. I can kind of see it, and I can also I also just sit there and I'm like, I can imagine how frustrated I would be as Sarah Jane, where starting over at the beginning. Like, that's in that particular scene. I'm kind of more in Sarah Jane's shoes than the Doctor.
But this is where Sarah Jane was actually at her best. She was technically attached to Unit at this point, so she was, you had the times where the Doctor was day tripping, and she did kind of tend to play the helpless companion in things like Death to the Daleks and that kind of stuff. But for the Earth-based stuff, she was always doing the whole investigative reporter kind of stuff, snooping around. Is that
another thing with these two is interesting? Because at times it would seem the episode was going for the whole damsel in distress thing, and then it kind of reversed that. The Doctor gets hurt, Sarah Jane goes to help him. Sarah Jane gets captured, the Doctor comes to rescue her. The Doctor gets captured. So it kind of goes back and forth with that without actually either being a damsel in distress situation or um, subverting it. It kind of
Yeah,
goes
although
middle ground there.
it's interesting to note that, with Sarah Jane in there, she's originally, when she's just her and the one elder guy, Sarah Jane is like on the verge of tears at that point. She's freaking out, she's not happy. Yet even when the doctor shows up and is promptly put in the same death situation,
Oh yeah, they're just having the time of their lives. They're just joking back
it's
and forth between them.
it's
It's it's
so it's
it's
just
it.
the
Yeah, I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
I was just saying it. It kind of echoes what I would expect. And this is probably where they got it from. Thinking like David Tennant and Rose in that situation. That's how I would see them doing it. That's probably
hmm
where those two got their part of that from is scenes like this.
Well, yeah, kind of. It's the very presence of the doctor in the situation is a calming effect on Sarah
Yeah.
Jane. Oh, the doctor's here. Things will turn out okay. And you notice the doctor originally wasn't even trying to escape. He's sitting there making
Yeah, they're
comments, but
just
the
sitting there
second they
cracking
haul
jokes.
off Sarah Jane, he immediately starts trying to wiggle out of the freaking cocoon that he's in.
Mhm.
And manages to do it. So it's kind of interesting. That was kind of an interesting way to look at it.
Right. And it's I was kind of wondering watching that scene as well. Like Sarah Jane falls over and she's like, "Oh, it's pins and needles," and you're kind of at least I was kind of wondering the whole time, like, well, is that the case, or is she intentionally stalling to find out what they're going to do? I mean, I know with if that were the doctor in that situation, it would be a feint, and he would probably like, flip them on their backs and take their keys or something. She doesn't do
I
that, but
I doubt it, considering even though the actual costume itself doesn't show it, but considering that was supposed to be a cocoon wrapped around it, kind of wrapping your muscles tight, means
mhm.
that her muscles had been sitting in more than one position since. Well, let's see. It was probably about the Metabolus equivalent of 12 hours. Because, she was captured in the middle of the night, brought there and webbed. And then the doctor, woke up, had breakfast, learned as much as he could about things before going off and getting captured.
Yeah,
So it's getting close to midday by the time this happens.
right.
Even if it's not afternoon, I don't know how long the doctor and Sarah Jane were in there cracking jokes at each other.
Hmm.
So for your muscles to be tied up like that for that amount of time, they will fall asleep. So I doubt she
I'm
was
sorry.
faking it.
Were we watching a scientifically accurate show? Because I didn't think so.
Sometimes the writers will think about those kind of things.
This is true.
And if they think about it, they'll include it.
Mm-hmm.
This is not Stephen Moffat writing it.
Yeah.
This is
True.
this is Barry Letts.
I'm like, we're also watching an episode about psychic spiders shooting lightning, so it's kind of hard to tell what's supposed to be scientifically
Well,
plausible and what's not.
technically that was supposed to be a psychic blast, but they can't really show a psychic blast. Just, if you had psychic powers and you telepathically blasted somebody,
What would it look
there
like?
would be no physical evidence of you
I
doing
would
so. You would look
probably,
at it.
if I were directing something like that happening using only what they had in the 70s, it would be
Mhm.
a stream of Vaseline being shot across the camera lens at the person.
I don't think that really works.
Yeah.
Just like the blur, like you would use like a blur effect in After Effects nowadays for for the type of thing that I'm thinking that I would be thinking of.
Yeah, but again, the blur effects weren't quite like that back then.
Hmm.
It's I think they did good for what they had.
Yeah.
You got to remember, this was 1974, so really, the BBC special effects department was about on par with Star Trek, the original series, and Lost in Space,
Mm-hmm.
both of which had aired on American television 5 years previous.
At
Now,
least.
as it goes on, that gap will extend to about 10 years because the American special effects companies will go ahead by leaps and bounds, and the BBC is a little slow on the uptake.
At least was back then.
Yeah. Nowadays,
That's
it
true.
seems to have gotten pretty good.
That's true. Series 20. I mean, season 26 came out around the same time as Next Gen, didn't it?
More or less, I think there was like a few months difference one way or the other. I think Next Gen came out in '86, and then of course, and
Oh,
that would have
okay.
been
So it was
when 26 was
20.
filming.
Okay.
So yeah, there was a little bit of overlap there. So yeah, you look at Series 26 versus first season of TNG.
Random sidebar. If I had just told the desktop background on my computer to skip forward a few images, I just now have an image showing the first 10 doctors, including all of their neckwear, right in front of me,
Mm.
which was useful about half an hour ago.
Were we discussing that on or off the podcast? Do
We
you
were
remember?
discussing that on the
On.
podcast.
We were talking. That was
We're done
okay.
the
we were
news, Randy.
discussing.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
discussion.
Sorry, I can't remember. We do have to have massive. We do have massive debates before the podcast, and sometimes it gets on Doctor Who topics.
Yeah.
Um. Anyway, where were we? Oh yes, special effects. Yeah, so really, there's a 5-year gap. So if you think about it, mental blasts done in original series Star Trek aren't much better.
A mental blast in original series Star Trek is literally a pop and something happens with nothing visible to explain what happened.
Well, except for what they would do in Next Generation is the fact that the guy's eye would glow.
Ah.
They would do an eye glow effect, and then they'd cut to Shatner writhing on the ground.
I'm trying to think if
Because
Charlie X had
Shatner
any
could-
equivalent to that, but I don't think so.
Oh, there was something he did. It was either an expression or something. But I know when they would have, godlike entities do that kind of stuff, there was usually an eye glow effect.
Or something of the like. Or
Yeah.
or just something to show that they're doing something.
I'm trying to remember what they used. Yeah, wait, their eyes were always glowing in where no man has gone before.
Yeah.
Was part of the side effect of their enhanced psychic abilities was the fact that they had glowing eyes.
I do like some of the fan art for this, though. I think this is fan art, or maybe this is a cover for a book version or something.
What?
Can you post it in the chat? The stream hasn't been working for me. Or rather, it works, but it's 10 minutes behind and plays at half
behind
speed.
thereabouts.
So,
That's
I had to
actually
guess it.
very nice.
if I had to guess, I'd say fan art because it looks too expensive for a Doctor Who novelization. But
Actually, I believe it's based on a picture in the novelization, but it is very enhanced. Because the picture in the novelization was black and white.
So a fan probably enhanced it, colored it,
Yeah.
put it out there.
Yeah. Because I do own the novelization for this. I will admit that I did not see this. This watching is the first time I've seen this serial in its entirety. I mentioned this to the other guys, but yeah, apparently my VHS, because I remember them chanting in the cellar, going the Om, Om, Om Madme Padme Om Madme Padme yeah, that thing.
Ting.
I remember them doing that. So I saw the first few episodes, but I'm pretty sure I never saw the Great One until I watched it yesterday.
I think the Great One's only in episode 6, right? Visibly, I mean.
Episode.
Yes.
Yeah, only visible in episode 6, but he does encounter it during episode 5.
And you
Yeah,
know what?
so-
When I look for the image name for the similar image of this on TARDIS data core says DW DVD and then a thing after, so this might be something from a DVD.
Okay, from the Planet of the
Maybe I think
Spiders.
maybe the back of the Planet of the Spiders or something.
That would make sense, but they might have had it as an insert or something.
Yeah, it might have been like an image
Maybe.
insert for like other alternate covers or
'Cause
something.
here's a version of it with text on it from something.
Let me see.
Maximum power.
Oh. Yeah, so what it looks like
Might have
is
been from a
that
magazine.
yeah, it looks like somebody may have taken the picture and drew it, and then they used the line frame art for the novelization.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, I'm seeing that also appears on one of the versions of the novelization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Like
there are some novelizations that have illustrations, and then there are some that are just a straight through read.
right.
And
Well,
I always bought mine used, so they were 6 of one, half
Mhm.
dozen of the other.
Well, I'm looking at. Well, I was just where I found that it was a gallery of images related to Planet of the Spiders, and there are two novelization covers. One of them looks nothing like it, but one of them does include that on the bottom of the cover, or at least a
Oh no,
similar.
this was inside the book. When you got to that section, they would like once every 50 pages or so there'd be a picture.
Okay.
Like once a chapter. So there was a black and white wireframe version of that in the chapter where he goes into the Cave of the Great One. I'm fairly certain. I could be absolutely wrong and my brain's playing tricks on me, but I swear that's where I've seen it.
See, if those had come out in the if these were coming out and Doctor Who had been airing through the 90s, it probably would have just had a bunch of stills from the episode in the middle of the book.
Yeah, that's what they tend to do with stuff like that in the 90s.
Yeah, well, they did not do that back in the Target book days. I'm pretty sure, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure I have one of the earlier editions of the book.
Hmm.
I think it's I can't even tell which cover it is, but I know it has the fourth Doctor Who logo, the same one used in the episode, in this episode.
Does it have the Doctor's face, a crystal, and a giant spider?
I can't remember if it's the one that shows the crystal and the spider, or if it's the one that shows Sarah with the spider on her back. Because there's
On your back.
There's a couple of different ones, yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember. I'd actually have to pull out my book library in Arlington and go through my books and look. Even if I still have it, it might have gotten damaged or destroyed in the 30 years since I read this. Moving on from that, though, one of the other things that I'd like to point out on this is the big vehicle chase.
Oh, yes.
In I think it's episode 2.
Yes, it's
I think
the tail
it is,
end
yes.
of 2.
Which is, it's interesting. Like the way I'd heard it described made me think that it was something that happened like during the climax, but it's really not. It's kind of a way for the beginning of this serial to say this is
Going to be
a
big.
this is a Third Doctor special event with something the Third Doctor loves. Vehicles.
Actually, it was kind of a goodbye thank you to Pertwee.
Yeah.
Right.
Because he had always wanted to do a scene like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, okay, this is your last serial. We're going to throw it in there. And it was literally thrown in there.
I mean,
You
just
could
like
you
watching it, you can kind of tell that this is some sort of this has to be some sort of special event with this montage of vehicles type of thing, because that's definitely something the Third Doctor had its fair share of, and then you have a lot of them all at once, and it's kind of
Yeah, I think we
really
have
early
had
on
some
says this
small.
serial is going to be something special, just as much as getting the crystal and the mail from Yoda's.
hmm
And I think we've had some small chases throughout the Third Doctor's run, but we never really had a really grand one like this.
Right.
Correct.
We never had one
So
that was on land, air, and sea.
And with hovercrafts and choppers and Bessie and everything else.
and the Whomobile, which I can't remember if this was the only appearance of the
I
Whomobile.
think it was. And it was also
If it
Pertree's
if it
personal car.
yes,
Who
I
was
know that.
who was driving it when the Doctor was driving Bessie and someone was driving the Whomobile to meet them? Who was driving it? Because I never could see who was in it.
No, it wasn't. It was there was a attendant that was waxing it in the unit parking lot, and Lupton stole it from there. Um, and then as they're sitting there, what to do? Sergeant Benton shows up in Bessie, and they chase the Whomobile in Bessie. And then the doctors,
Oh,
has them go
Lupton
to the
was
airfield
driving.
real quick.
You're saying
Yeah,
Lupton was
Lupton's.
driving the Whomobile. Okay.
Yep. Okay, no, it was actually on the air before.
Oh.
It was in Invasion of the Dinosaurs.
Oh, it was?
Yes.
That must have been something I missed. I could have
Yeah,
sworn I
see,
saw that
that-
entire story.
I kind of feel like it would have been kind of weird for it to be introduced in this of all stories.
I could have sworn this was the first time, but
No,
I mean,
he
its
used
ability
it
to fly
to
was
search for the
introduced.
secret
it has
base.
been a few years.
I can tell that it was not in the novelization though.
Hmm.
Um, it was weird because it was the BBC didn't commission it. It was Pertwee's vehicle.
Mhm.
So when he left, he took it with him.
Yeah.
It was
Probably stashed in
never
some corner of
the name
TARDIS
Whomobile
somewhere.
was Pertwee's personal name for it. It was never called that in the show. It was only referred to simply as the Doctor's car. Barry Letts wouldn't have let it be called the Whomobile. Because, for one, it was, too much like the Batmobile.
Right.
Um,
Kind of feel like if John Nathan Turner had gotten his hands on it, they might have called it that, but it would have had question marks all over it.
yeah.
And we'd have to slap him for it. Because that's ruining
Thank
the
good.
good model.
Thank goodness it did not. Apparently, the vehicle was classified as a invalid tricycle. Well, that's what they call the Reliant Robin in England, and that's a three-wheeled car. And it gets around certain vehicular laws by only having three wheels. It's really weird. They might have closed those gaps by now, but yeah.
Maybe. I could go on a Top Gear tangent, but I won't.
Yeah, apparently when it showed up in Invasion of the Dinosaurs, the roof door section had not been completed. So a motorboat windscreen had been fitted to make it legally roadworthy.
So they made something really quick and easy just to be able to get it on the road.
Yep.
And then
And
for this
then
particular story, they finally finished it.
Yep, they finally got the hood and stuff on it. Freaking weird vehicle. I don't remember who built it.
Pertwee.
No, it was commissioned by Pertwee.
Yeah, he wasn't the
built it.
mechanic.
Oh. Yeah.
I mean, the man can do a lot of things, but not everything.
But he loves gadgets and gizmos and little strange
He
things.
loves,
So yeah,
yeah, he loves them, but
Whomobile.
it doesn't mean he likes having them. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean he likes building them. I mean, if Doctor Who was being played by Tim Allen, probably he built it. And that's the scariest concept I
And then
never want to hear again.
it would have blown up the first time he took it on the road.
That's Tim Taylor, not Tim Allen.
But
Tim Allen. Tim
Tim
Allen's
Allen is a comedy actor.
correct, but he's also a car nut. He actually does build kit cars. That was something he incorporated into Tim Taylor. But the blowing stuff up is Tim Taylor.
Oh God, now I'm picturing Exhibit coming on and making a car for the Doctor.
Mm. You never know.
Does Pimp Your Ride still? Do they still have that going on?
Yeah, well, mind you, the guy has been making cars for cinema forever.
Hmm.
I mean, who do you think made the star car from Last Starfighter? Yeah, he did it.
Yeah.
That car was awesome.
Yeah.
Too bad the transformation sequence is all CGI.
Oh, of course. But still, yeah, there was an actual prop. But no, the guy makes Hollywood cars, and he's done it for like years and years and years and years. But
He made the
no,
original Batmobile, didn't he?
I might have. I think so.
'Cause, yeah, that needed
But
to be a
yeah,
prop that worked.
if Doctor Who had been made in Hollywood, they probably would have got him to make the car.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, if this were a modern Who episode, the entire vehicle chase would have been the TARDIS chasing the guy.
Yeah.
Or actually, no, he might have. In the Clara era, they seem to have a thing for motorcycles. So
Yeah, that was the one thing we didn't see in the chase is no one had a motorcycle.
That was the only thing missing.
I don't think were motorcycles as big culturally in the 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've
They
been
were
big since
definitely
like
coming
the
into their
50s
own
and
then.
60s. Yeah, they've
Right,
been big.
right. Okay.
They've
I
been
didn't
big
think about
since
the
the
50s.
50s, since people got the old motorcycles
Right.
that were used in
Like,
World War II and
mhm.
retooled them for civilian use.
Yeah, see, I think motorcycles, I think 80s action movies, but yeah, I didn't think about them being
No,
used
there
in
was
the
also
50s and
70s
such.
stuff
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, remember, Rebel Without a Clue, man. That was 60s. Or Rebel Without a Cause, whatever.
I was gonna say, without a clue.
I'm
That's
sorry,
a-
I was
that's
thinking
a-
of the, I was
that's a
thinking of
Moby
the, I
Dick
was thinking of
song.
the lyrics from the Tom Petty song. So
Mhm.
my brain went sideways. It does that.
That's the default direction my brain travels in.
Mine kind of goes quark-wise, actually.
So, Bill's brain walks like a crab. Okay.
You can't tell which way my brain goes without using fourth dimensional physics.
Now, is that fourth dimensional as in time, or is that fourth dimensional as in the bare vestiges of M theory?
Both.
Very nice.
Okay, so
Yeah, so
we've
back to the episode.
we've discussed the chase scene. We've discussed some of the visual effects.
It was
Oh no, we did.
interesting. It was interesting them
Discussed
bringing
mostly the
in.
lightning.
Yeah,
Now-
we just
now that-
mostly discussed the lightning.
Yeah.
I was going to
Now-
say, I was going to discuss the spider models
Okay. Go
and
ahead.
look where they were. Look where how far Doctor Who came from 10 years previous. I mean, it's still obviously a fake, but compared to like the Zarbi from a serial 10 years previous,
Right.
these were pretty good. And obviously, I can't tell if they were using puppets or whatever, but when when the guy turned the psychic power back on the spider, that thing writhed pretty good.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder if a young J.K. Rowling watched this episode and that was the mental
Oh,
inspiration for the using the crustaceous curse on a spider.
I'm trying to find an equivalent of 10 years after this to compare that.
You're not gonna find much. I think
That
there's
would
a
have
It
been
won't.
Marvel
around.
chapter movie out
It
there.
wouldn't. It will not have changed that much, except
That would
for
have been
there'll
the
be.
Davison era.
Yeah, that would have been 84. So that would have been actually um, Resurrection of the Daleks would be a good example of what was going on at that time.
Snake Dance.
Caves of Vedrazani. Of course, you want to deal with the dragon. We'll talk about that in a couple of weeks.
Right.
Snake Dance.
Snake Dance, although that was 2 years earlier.
Still, around about the same time though.
And yeah, that was pretty bad because I swear it looks like they took one of those segmented. You remember? Do you remember those little toys that they'd have as a kid
Yes.
that you
Yes.
pull on and it would move like a snake? It looked like they took one of
Yes.
those and
Most
put a
definitely.
little bit of a wrapper around it.
Actually, what that snake looks like nowadays is like those weird guys with their outstretched arms that are kind of filled by wind and float up in the air. They can randomly come down and go back up.
Oh,
Right.
the
Right.
wacky waver guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of looks like
Uh,
one of those, only formed as a snake and with a little more control.
all right, let's see if I can find a classic image of the Mara. Oh God, yeah, right there, number one.
Yeah, the Mara is not hard to find. I can
Yeah.
find that. Oh goodness. Yeah, matter of fact, there's a side by side with the original.
There you go, Matt.
Hmm.
Just a picture of the Mara, which will show you where Doctor Who went in 10 years, and the answer is not very far.
Right.
Yeah, as I was saying, I got a picture here that shows the original Mara and the digital one that they did for a new re-release.
That I
As
don't
an
care
option.
about. That's not the point here. We're talking about how the show itself
But
evolved.
you want to see just the original? Let's see here. We got. Oh, here's a really good shot of it.
I put a link in the page. Yeah.
Yeah, I already looked at that one, but that was a close up of the face mostly. This is like the whole body.
Post it in the chat because I don't have the stream running either because,
Uh,
well, other people are using this
it's
connection.
actually kind of small. So let me see. Oh, that looks kind of interesting. Almost wish that was the Mara.
But yeah, it looked really, really fake, and the spiders only looked kind of fake. It was the kind of fake where it did not break your suspension of disbelief, but the Mara was just kind of like, oh wow, that's bad.
Right.
Yeah, it looked like it was essentially a pinata.
It was bad. It was really cheesy bad. It was kind of camp bad. I would have expected it from like Lost in Space
Right.
during their camp phase. Anyway, yeah, but other than that, I mean, it's almost like Doctor Who devolved because these spiders were fairly decent for what they were trying to do. They didn't move particularly well because they were having the thing, I think, like puppeteering it and then over a blue screen and then splicing it on whatever image they needed. I noticed it more on the Earth scenes than I did on the Metabelus scenes,
Yes.
Hmm.
but mostly they kind of sat around in the Metabelus scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, except for pretty much their death scene and one or two other scenes.
Yeah, still, they looked pretty good for what they were. I'm not saying they're by any means good by today's standards.
Right.
Nothing in the original 26 season run would be good by today's standards except for some of the costumes. Some of the later Cybermen were still acceptable. For instance,
I would say the first thing I would consider acceptable by today is probably the Sensorites.
God, and that was the 60s.
Yeah, that was season one.
Yeah, that was when they started.
Sensorites, the Cybermen were held up pretty good for the most part.
No, well,
Oh
if
wow,
if
I
if
I
the,
have
if the
I've never
season
seen
four
the
Cybermen
Sensorites.
came out now, people would throw a fit.
Yeah, but no, I mean like the 80s and 70s Cybermen in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Matt was just saying he actually kind of wishes they would go back to the silver suits with the pieces instead of the entire thing being
Right.
metal.
I can give or take some things. I mean, the more recent version of Cybermen were pretty good.
The Iron Man Cybermen.
Yeah.
Actually, it might not have been you. It might have been DS that was saying that. My friend from Australia. He might have been. Yeah, it's yeah, that we were talking about this last night. He'd love to see them return to the silver wetsuit jumpsuit of old, and from a costuming standpoint, it fixes one of their big problems, and that is the fact that they currently need so many stuntmen of the same height and build, like five or
Right.
six, and the old silver costume, you just needed the height.
Yeah.
And now we're into the Iron Men Cybermen, which I actually told DS my horrible thought of a Marvel Doctor Who crossover where the Cybermen take over Stark Industries and steal Stark tech. Can you imagine Cybermen with a War Machine upgrade?
They'd have
But
machine
how long would
guns.
it
They'll
take?
have a useless
But
firecracker
here's the
rocket,
thing:
though.
if the Doctor and Tony Stark sat in a room together, how long would it take for them to come up with a virus that would completely invalidate all of the Cybermen's technology?
Or how long before the weight of their egos collapses into a black hole?
Actually, that would be the climax of the episode: the Doctor and Tony trying to stop arguing long enough to send a virus out to defeat the Cybermen before they take over the world.
Because yeah, there would be a bit of ego dick waving there.
They would have to bring
The-
back K9 so that Jarvis would have someone to interact with.
I can just see snide comments by Tony Stark on that one.
There we go. We wanted an episode written by Joss Whedon. That's the one.
Oh God, it's so wrong.
Yeah, it feels so right.
It's so wrong.
And
We have
here's your paper mache
Clara
snake.
and Pepper doing their thing, whatever that is. We have Tony and the Doctor in one room, and we have either Handles remade or a new K9 dealing with Jarvis.
I think
Yeah.
Handles technically just died of power loss.
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
thing.
But
If they
anyway.
still have the chip, they can always bring him. The
No,
Mike.
I think that was a one-shot thing.
True.
All right.
I mean, okay.
Okay, moving on.
Another
And Bill
interesting thing.
Bill shuts up and goes back to his fan fiction, writing the Return of Handles.
I'd rather not. I think that's more likely than K9 nowadays.
I like K9. I prefer K9. I would have preferred it if it
I
was
do as
K9 in
well.
that episode.
I just think Moffat prefers Handles.
Yeah, Moffat's an idiot, so shush.
Another
Stop
thing
feeding
is
his
interesting
stupid
here.
ego.
To finally iron out what regeneration is about, they bring in another Time Lord to explain it.
Mm-hmm.
I kind
And
of
they
like.
actually this is the first time the term regeneration is used.
Have we figured that out? Because I know we spent some time wondering if it was used in the Three Doctors or not.
I don't think
remember
it
if we
was.
searched it or not.
If
I don't
it
recall
if
it.
if I don't think it was because I don't think they mentioned anything to do with regenerations in particular.
Yeah, they did not mention
I think
the
they
word
just used the word
regeneration that I
replacement.
recall.
Yeah.
And we watched it not too long ago, so they just mentioned the word replacements. And that was the first Doctor quote.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Planet of the Spiders is the first mention of regeneration.
Where'd you find that? Because I was just trying to find it.
I looked at the list of episode references under regeneration in the TARDIS
Oh, okay.
wiki. They don't call it regeneration in the end of the Fourth Doctor either. He just does it.
Right.
The moment has been prepared for.
But then it is mentioned in Caves of Androzani. Yeah, it's kind of it's before that they didn't give it a name and they actually define it in this episode.
Yes. Which is good because the last two were really like they were pretty much pulled out of a writer's ass and could pretty much have been anything up until this point. Whereas here they actually tell you what it is, why it happens, who can do it, and so
The
forth.
12 regeneration limit, of course, isn't mentioned here and won't come into play until the Deadly Assassin.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is the first time. I mean, they actually set up a scene where he mentions the term regeneration and Sarah Jane goes, "Regeneration, what's that?"
Right.
Just so the Doctor can physically explain it to her and thus explain it to the audience.
I don't think the doctor does. Does the doctor explain it, or just the other guy?
One of them explains
Yeah.
it.
I believe they both kind of explained it a little bit.
Oh, I gotta admit, before they actually revealed who he was, I was wondering if he was Tommy that had somehow gone back in time and become the leader of the monks.
Oh,
Because that was right after he started, going from being mentally handicapped to being
super Tommy.
at least
Yeah.
implied above average intelligence, although we never really see
Yeah.
what he becomes.
Yeah, we don't really see the far-stretching changes in his mental limits, but yeah, Tommy became Super Tommy.
Yep. It was. This is the first time it was mentioned, and this is the first time it was called this, and this stuck because it's still known as regeneration today. But yeah, there was a scene particularly set up to explain it. No, I knew that Choji Campo was a setup because there was an earlier bit where the Doctor recalls a monk that lived up the hill, and that's who Campo was.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, in this case, Campo has to give the Doctor a push for regeneration because of
Right.
the amount how damaged his cells were. And of course, again, we see that here there's no glow or anything. They just did a nice fade change.
Right.
Yeah,
From
they did a very nicely
second-
positioned fade change at that.
Yeah, really, really, really nicely. They must have had their marks on very well. Either that or Baker and Pertwee were of very good at remembering where they each were.
Mm-hmm.
Because they change, and there was you almost just looked like he became younger,
Yeah,
so much as a different person.
I'll pull this up and I'll share it with you guys. This is in the middle of the transformation. The nose, the chin matches up pretty good.
I think those two are more physically similar than when they did the Hartnell to Troughton, which was they were
A
pretty
little
much in
bit.
the exact same position, but their faces were very different.
Or the later transitions that we'll see from Baker to Davidson, who look absolutely nothing alike.
Yeah. Which of course
And-
they also had to help deal with that. They had the all white ghost figure of the Watcher that we'll discuss next week.
Yeah.
There.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's kind of a weird thing that they did with that one, and we'll mention that later. But also,
this episode kind of sets a precedent for the Watcher, with
Kind of,
the
it
other
does.
time we're kind
A
of
little bit.
having a vision of his future regeneration. Either that, or he kind of controls the regeneration to become this thing he's already been projecting.
A lot of us thought it might have been because the Fourth Doctor actually kind of outlived his body's usefulness slightly and was kind of like Tennant refusing to change. So his kind of earlier self kind of manifested to, shove him the right way. And it's, basically the Watcher shows up, it's time's up, Doctor. But we'll talk about that next week. Let's see, anything else with this particular episode? Brigadier and Unit were nice.
Oh yes, the Brigadier. I kind of get the impression, especially. I mean, this probably isn't the only time, but I kind of feel like the Brigadier is kind of like the older, like the parent that's been watching Doctor Who for years. While their kid is new to it, the Brigadier is like, "Oh, another regeneration. Well,
yeah,
here's how this is to me."
That is kind of true because
it wasn't also just a nice nod to bring him in at the very end of the serial to be like, here we go, showing farewell to the Doctor, just like the Brigadier brought this Doctor in.
Also, in one of the bits in this, I can't remember. Oh, I think it's when they discover the dead body or something, or that he's dead, or something. The Brigadier calls for a medic. And after the fact that it's not needed. Oh, I think it's when the Doctor's staring into the crystal and he's staring, not moving or anything. And so the Brigadier calls for a medic. And he's on the phone when the Doctor actually starts moving, and it's the smell of the coffee that brought him out of it. And the Brigadier shakes his head and goes, "Never mind, Sullivan," and hangs up the phone.
Right, I remember hearing that.
And this was a nod to Harry Sullivan, who would, of course, come in the next series as a companion to Tom Baker.
Now, so it was his first. What was his first serial as a companion?
Harry Sullivan. He'll show up in Robot.
He was in Robot.
He was in Robot.
Yes.
I don't remember him being very memorable in Robot.
He was in the first scene with Tom in that episode.
He basically shows up. Basically, he's trying to help the Doctor post-regeneration, and the Doctor's acting all freaking odd. And
Doctor wants to be a Viking.
He goes into the TARDIS to change clothes, comes out a Viking. I'm pretty sure that was Tom Baker at work already. That was the thing. When Tom Baker started, boom, he's Tom Baker. He only really settles down slightly.
Yeah, it's too bad we never had a Baker and Shat crossover. I mean, that would have been hell for whoever was trying to, direct them. But amazing for the audience.
It would have been great to have a Doctor Who episode take place on the original Enterprise.
Of course, at this point, it probably would have been the animated Enterprise.
That would have been going on about this time, but still, I mean, just even if they just did it as a special.
Yeah.
Or even as like a Saturday Night Live skit.
They just fly in William Shatner and a few other people just for a Doctor Who special.
Or even just like a Children in Need skit.
Yeah.
That would have been awesome. Just to have that crossover exist as a comedy skit would have been awesome. Saturday Night Live or Children in Need or something.
Right.
Heck, I would even like to see it done in Next Generation.
Now,
or Voyager or anything like that. Get the guys from the new continuity.
Right.
And have the Doctor show up and try to figure out why the hell everything's changed. Come on.
Wait. I think someone's been interfering with time around here. It starts looking at Kirk and Picard.
That's kind of like what I was saying right before we started the stream.
Picard starts looking at Kirk and Spock.
Get the Chris Pine crew and the Doctor. Get Capaldi to come in and try to figure out why the hell everyone's not quite what they're supposed to be like.
The farther this goes, the less I can remember what I was about to say or what we were talking about when the thought came into my mind.
Um, we were originally discussing the regeneration. We were discussing Tom Baker being Tom Baker.
And then you started going on a tangent about crossovers.
Oh no! All I did was mention Shatner, and it became
Yeah.
a crossover discussion from there.
Well, what do you expect
Yeah.
when you bring in Shatner,
Oh,
Bill?
that's right. We were talking about human characters like Sullivan and such.
Yeah, we're talking
who
about
was
them.
the guy that Sarah Jane was driving around with in the beginning that first cued her into something weird going
That's
on?
Mike Yates, dude.
Mike Yates. Mike Yates was,
That was
a
Mike
member
Yates?
of Unit.
That
Yes,
was
Captain
Mike Yates.
Yes. See, the thing is, Mike Yates
That's like
was
there's too many people that all fit the same basic description, and I'm not good enough with faces.
Oh, my
well,
word, Bill.
you haven't watched enough Third Doctor serials because Mike Yates is in a good chunk of them.
He's in almost all of them, yes.
Yes,
He's not in.
he
He's in maybe half, maybe.
actually he shows
He's
up. I
in
think
3/4
shortly
of them.
in.
He's
He
not
shows
in the
up-
first season.
I thought he was like in the last episode of the first season.
I thought he first appeared in Terror of the Autons,
Okay, he might have.
and then he's pretty
but-
sparse in the last season.
In the last season because he's only there for the unit side episodes, and there's a reason for this, and I was about to explain that.
Right.
Is he's in there for a good chunk of the second and third season, but in the Green Death, Mike Yates gets his brain partially taken over by the
Right.
boss,
Yeah.
the AI that's running the show in the Green Death. This leads him to confused and easily vulnerable to the idea of the Golden Age, which is part of the storyline Invasion of the Dinosaurs.
Right.
To that point, Mike Yates actually winds up working as a double agent for the bad guys. To the point that he actually apparently draws a gun on the Brigadier and the Doctor and Sergeant Benton. Following this, he's of course drummed out of Unit. So this is where we catch up with Yates afterwards, of him trying to clear his head of all the influence and nastiness that's been shoved into it and all the brainwashing. So yeah, that's who Mike Yates is that person. You just probably didn't recognize him because he's not in uniform for the first time
Maybe.
in like ever. And it's the same
Like-
guy that read the Third
like
Doctor
my-
serial that we didn't like.
Right. My brain kept telling me that it was the guy from the other guy from the Green Death. Well, the guy specifically from the Green Death, who I don't think appears in another serial.
No.
But I'm
Not
like,
even
I'm
close,
thinking like,
Bill.
no, I know that's not him, but my brain kept telling me that it was.
What? That it was Professor Jones?
Yeah.
No, he married Joe, and they're in South
Right.
America.
Right. That's part why I was confused. Like my mind keeps wanting to tell me that it's him, and I'm like, no, it's not.
I don't know why your mind even went that way.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Mm.
Yeah, I was a little confused when I first watched this story because I didn't know what happened in Invasion of the Dinosaurs. I still, to this date, have not seen that serial.
I've never seen
I've heard it.
most of it.
I heard it can be skipped because it's pretty bad.
There's a few important little things like Mike in it, but
I meant the special
the
effects in that
effects
one.
are
They
terrible.
play they play with toy dinosaurs that they must have bought down the store at the discount toy store.
And
At
have them run
Woolworths.
around on little cardboard sets.
You know, the thing is, I've read the story Invasion of the Dinosaurs. I've read the novelization. But the novelization was written in a way that you thought it was the Fourth Doctor that was there.
Come to think of it, I think the toys that Wash plays with in Serenity are more realistic than the ones in Invasion of the Dinosaurs.
Anywho,
Yeah. But, obviously they were saving their budget for this.
because this was that chase sequence in
Yeah.
particular had to have been a
mean,
huge money sink.
I don't know what gas prices were like those days. Nowadays, that vehicle sequence would cost a fortune to shoot.
It's 74. If it was 79, gas prices might have been an issue.
Yeah.
Because it was the later 70s that they had that.
Mm.
But yeah, it's good to see these characters. It's good to actually get a bit of a conclusion to Yates' storyline, actually.
Yeah. And even though we don't actually see Liz and Joe, we do get a reference to Joe and the crystal. Unfortunately, I don't think there's really anything to do with Liz. We get the Brigadier.
Liz kind of stumped off after the first season, so we actually had a lot more
Eh.
Joe.
Well, Liz requested a transfer, unless you're, and that's real, and that was off screen, unless you're referring to the actress.
I was referring to the character.
Okay.
I don't know what the actress's story was.
Mm-hmm. Not 100% certain myself, actually.
Whose?
The actress that played Liz.
Yeah,
she
like
left.
I know she was willing to do Doctor Who related things years down the line, but I don't remember why she actually left at the end of season 7.
I don't remember either.
Do you remember her name off the top of your head?
I will find it in a moment.
Okay.
Look up one Liz
I
Shaw.
think it's Carolyn something.
Carolyn John, then. If that's her. That was Liz, okay.
Carolyn John, yeah, Liz Shaw.
Her spouse is, was Jeffrey Beavers. Oh, I did not know that Liz married the Master.
Blink.
Interesting.
What's that?
It says former spouse Jeffrey Beavers.
Huh.
Who would've
It's
thought
a,
Liz Shaw would marry the Master.
Oh, it might have been that she had to resign because she was pregnant at the time.
Oh.
Okay.
That's kind of a douche way of going about it, but okay.
It's happened a few times. It's also rumored to be what happened to Romana 1.
Yeah, we talked about that last week.
Mm-hmm.
Or a couple of weeks ago. Something like that, yeah. It's still a really douche way of going about things.
Well, they didn't quite have.
Oh no, wait! I'm seeing. Here it says new series producer Barry Letts believed the character was too intellectual to be a suitable companion to the Doctor and decided against renewing her contract for the next season.
It's also mentioned under her listing under the TARDIS Wikia that as Caroline was pregnant at the time, Letts considered her character unsuitable and did not renew her contract. So she was also pregnant at the time, so she might have had to resign even if Letts had let her renew her contract.
Too intellectual. Did he see this previous season's companion?
She means Zoe?
Yeah.
Zoe, the mathematician wonder of the universe.
Right.
Yeah, I'm thinking what they were worried about is the fact that John Pertwee did not have the most technical of mind. So
He couldn't spew out jargon like she could, apparently.
correct, and they thought the relationship.
Were they afraid that Liz would tell him to stop reversing the polarity of neutrons?
No, it was afraid that Liz would look too smart compared to the Doctor, compared to John Pertwee's Doctor.
It wasn't that rare that Zoe looked smarter than the Doctor, although it often showed off that the Doctor was intentionally playing himself down, but still.
Correct. Yeah, that's also the case, and Troughton could handle the jargon when he needed to. Pertwee had a big trouble with jargon.
Which is why they made the neutron flow.
Yeah, because it was easy for him to remember because it had
that's one of the few technical garbles that he was given. He's like, this line here, and the writer was like, oh, you can change it if you want to. No. Reverse the polarity of the neutron flow. I like that. I get that.
He liked it because it rolled off the tongue well. Reverse the polarity of the neutron flow. It worked well for that, and he was able to memorize it.
It didn't confuse the polarity. That would come later. Cricket.
What's that?
Yeah.
I said it didn't confuse the polarity. That would
No,
come
that's
later.
yeah. Sorry, I missed that. Yeah, I remember just seeing an interview with him on that. So that was, I think, what they were worrying about is the fact that she was outshining the Doctor in just technical knowledge. So Barry just went.
Toss.
And you do realize that why Pertwee left the show at this point, don't you? One was that Barry Letts was leaving, and they were big friends. And the other one was the fact that Roger Delgado
Had died.
He had died in a
That's
car
right.
crash, and they
That's
were really
right.
close friends.
Yes, that's right.
In fact, the original final episode for this series was going to be called, I think it was like the final game or the final something, and it was going to be the death of the Master.
Supposedly.
Yeah, that was their plan. It was going to be the death of the Master, and when he died, while it was in early production, I mean, like, early writing stages, they looked at the script and said, no, we can't do this, so they quickly did Planet of the Spiders instead. So you also got
At least they had some respect for Delgado, because how many producers have been like, well, now that he's dead, we have to find a way to kill the character.
They did, technically. When he showed up again, he had regenerated and been, fucked up.
Not so much
Whether or not he
regenerated, but was
I think seems to
degenerating.
be kind of a point of contention. I had always got the impression that he had just started rotting from there, but apparently there's great debate as to whether or not as to which incarnation Delgado actually was.
Yeah, it's a matter of debate on whether that was his final form or.
It doesn't exactly help that we are now able to have up to 28 Masters and 26 Doctors.
Yep.
Well, we already broke that rule of the 5
doctors.
doctors.
What happened?
We already broke that rule with the 5 doctors,
What do you mean?
They were offering the Master a new round of lives.
But he didn't get it.
He didn't get them, but it was still something that was capable of being happened.
They apparently gave it to him during the Time War.
Right. After he had already borrowed 2 other lives.
Yeah.
Unless you count, what's his name? Who was the one that had the cameo in the beginning of the movie?
I don't know, but I think he was supposed to be the previous Master.
The one that was, yeah. Okay, so
which is why they had his face and everything.
He's intended to be playing Ainley then.
It's just Ainley was either dead or unavailable at the time.
So it just hit his head and went, yeah, that's Ainley.
Let's see. Who was it that played him in there? They actually don't give him in the list of Masters.
While Randy's looking that up, we were talking about effects earlier. So, blue screens.
Oh yes, welcome to Doctor Who does blue screens. It was still a new technology that just showed up a couple seasons ago, so they're really big on it right now.
And they were just really trying to feel it out, and
I'm trying to remember what scene. I remember one of the scenes I was watching, and like, oh, hello, early prototypical blue screen.
Link.
Although that might have been the spider walking through the building.
Gordon Tipple was the one that played him.
That's the one, Tipple, yes, that's the name.
The hell?
Ah, yes, the Whomobile blue screen. Or it looks like it might have been a green or something.
Oh,
Kind of
okay.
hard to tell.
Yeah, not entirely sure what color screen they did use for this.
Mhm.
All I know is that it
Now,
occasionally left white outlines.
Yeah.
it was blue screen at this point.
And I would point out that even Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi suffered from the early chroma key technology. That was one of the things that George Lucas wanted to do the special editions to fix, was how obvious the chroma key effects were at the time.
Yeah,
And of
and
course,
Return was
Star Wars had a much bigger budget, and Empire came out about what 6 7 years after this episode.
yeah, and Return of the Jedi I think was the first one to use green screen, wasn't it?
I'm not sure. I know Hoth used some sort of chroma key, and I know that the Rancor fight used some
Yeah, but
sort
I
of.
thought it was still blue
I
screen for
I
that.
could not tell you which was which. I mean,
Because I know I saw behind the scenes for Return of the Jedi, and that was green screen, and they were talking on how that's a new technology instead of the old blue screen technology.
like I know now the two are treated as pretty much equivalent, depending on what you're shooting in front of it.
Yeah.
Back
Hmm.
then, I can't really tell you.
Mind you, they didn't call it chroma key in England. They
Right,
referred to it
right.
as color separation overlay, which is like they're the only ones that called
Yeah.
it that.
Like I'm saying chroma key just because it's a catch-all term that includes several different effects, and that's what most video editing software will refer to it as
Yeah,
nowadays.
chroma key or
Hmm.
color key is also another term they use for it as
Yeah,
color key.
okay. Yeah, the difference between the blue and green screen is green screen is used for digital chroma keying, and blue screen was used for the old analog style, which
Okay,
is definitely what we're seeing here.
right, right. Like blue can be used for digital, but I guess you're saying green was the
The
first to
only
be
time
used.
they tend to use blue screen for digital is if there's something green in the shot.
And even then,
That.
that's kind of iffy. Red screen is better for that.
Hmm.
I mean, really, as an amateur video producer, I'd say the only time I would use blue screen is if I couldn't find something green to put behind me,
Yeah.
and that's about it.
I use blue screen because I have blue walls.
Hmm.
That's
And
pretty
even
much the main
and even I
reason.
thought you mostly used red screen.
I've only used red screen for one video,
Oh, okay.
and that was for my biggest special effects heavy video
Right,
ever,
right.
other than my last season finale, which I went back to blue screen again because
Okay.
I
Yeah.
didn't have a green outfit on.
Yeah, it's easy. You can, I mean, at the time, these special effects were new and wow, look at how they're doing it. And you can tell that they're trying to be impressive by
Yeah.
the by the
That's
professor,
just
show me your display of psychic powers by levitating this tray.
that's just like Remembrance of the Daleks. Nowadays, you're like, oh my god, that CGI is terrible. Whereas back then, you're like, wow, the coffin is levitating over the ground, and the
Hmm.
ba- and the baseball bat is glowing.
Yeah, although mentioning that, really, their CSO really didn't improve that much between here and when they were doing that.
They just knew how to do
Slightly.
it a little bit
It
better with
probably
better
got cheaper for
machines.
them to make. It probably got cheaper and easier for them to do it. That's
Hmm.
probably like advances that you can't see on the screen, but that actually do happen.
Yeah, as little as Doctor Who got for its budget in the '80s, we're surprised they weren't filming in a bathtub.
Please, do you think they could afford a bathtub?
Randy, they wouldn't be shooting in the bathtub. They would be shooting in a freaking aquarium, just showing
All right,
things through
all
the
right, all right.
glass,
We've
and you see
we've
the
got
wires.
we've got the new budget in for the new series of Doctor Who for this year, and I'm afraid it's been cut again.
You're getting a
Yep.
aquarium, and you're going to be doing underwater sea battles. Good luck.
Yes, I'm afraid we're going to have to cut more from the special effects and costuming budget. From now on, you are all going to have to be acting in the nude. What?
It's like
I'm sorry, we can't afford money for costumes.
from now
On the
on, our
plus side, it'll
special
get ratings up.
from now on, our special effects sequences will be shot with a Doctor Who action figure and a real fish from the director's fishbowl.
Oh.
And yes, we can't even afford chroma key anymore. So yes, when you're asked to levitate that stuff, I'm going to have to ask you to throw it in the air and act like you're using your mind. All right, places.
Tunk, you're amazing.
Hurry up. We have to shoot 3 scenes, and we've only got this for another half hour.
I really hope they weren't still doing that crap in the 80s.
Look at it float through the magic of this fish wire. No, we gotta take all that fish wire back. We need it for another special effects shot.
I know editing technology has greatly advanced in the past 20 years, but the fact is we only have enough film to shoot this episode once. So if you screw up, you're replaced by a black screen.
Yeah, it's at this point though, Doctor Who was still mostly, it was a respected children's show. And it became more respected under Tom Baker, and then that's when it started to shrivel up, is when he left.
Well, I know the ratings started to fall when he switched to the red costume.
It did, but really, I think that's more to the point of who was in charge.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm not saying it was because of the costume. I'm just saying that was part of it. I mean, I imagine it, becoming less funny and therefore less entertaining to the kids and less like the show that they grew up with was a large part of that.
Yeah, because, when they switched to the red costume, who did they drop as their script editor? Douglas Adams.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Could you imagine if Doctor Who had continued under Douglas Adams?
It'd be a happier place.
Yeah.
First of all, we probably would have seen Doctor Who and the Cricket Men.
I could see that.
I think he was actually bandying about the idea in his head when he got sacked. And he kind of recycled it into the third.
Are you saying crickets as in, like, Kamen Rider cricket or as in Peter Davison's outfit cricket?
As in, Peter, you've never actually read the Douglas Adams Hitchhiker's books, have you?
I haven't actually read the book. Oh, no, that's something that was in Hitchhiker's
Portal
Guide.
Cricket Men, Bill.
I don't know Portal.
Basically,
you're talking crickets as in cricket as in crickets, not as in the noun, not as in the sport.
No, I mean as in the sport.
Oh, okay.
It's as in the sport.
Oh,
okay.
The Cricket Men were an alien race of robots,
right?
That were basically they had these paddle arms and used explosive balls.
See,
and they were
I feel like
feared.
That's something that should have been in Black Orchid. Although I still haven't watched that, but
no. The thing is, though, the sport of cricket in the Douglas Adams' universe is seen as this horrible bastardization of one of the worst wars in the history of the galaxy. They're actually offended. Everything, including the breaking of the Wicket Gate, is all just this horrible, horrible thing. Because, the Cricket Men were from this isolated planet, and the Wicket Gate was what they used to seal them up, so the breaking of the gate was kind of significant. I've read the Hitchhiker's books hundreds of times.
Yeah,
so.
I forgot about them, but I have read that
literally
book.
my only experience with the Hitchhiker's stuff is the TV miniseries, and that's all that I've seen.
Sit down, read the books.
I'm gonna hit you over the head with my Bible-sized Hitchhiker's book.
You have a library somewhere in your neighborhood?
I think they only have the first two at the library, but I have to double check that.
Yeah, double check that. If not, go to a bookstore and get them. They're not that expensive.
Or at the very least, listen to the radio show.
They are worth the read. At least the
course,
original 4.
I say
I
that
can
looking up
skip
at my
the fifth.
bookshelf at the 20 books that are waiting for me to read them, but
These should come first. I'm sorry. If you're talking about British science fiction and British humor, reading Douglas Adams is a mandatory, especially when if we ever get into that era, because a lot of what was written in the Hitchhiker's books had to do with Doctor Who. A lot of it did, especially the last two books, because Douglas Adams didn't have the best experience with Doctor Who, especially, with John Nathan Turner
Right.
tossing him out on his ear. And he took all that bitterness and he twisted it sardonically and wrote the third Hitchhiker's book. I think he took an idea he was tossing around in his head for a Doctor Who episode, only where the Doctor is the kind of person that, given the choice between going to a really good party and saving the universe, he'd choose to save the universe. He made the character Ford Prefect the anti-Doctor. The character that, given the choice between going to a really nice party and saving the universe, would go to the really nice party. So that's really, there's a lot of what was in there. I actually had a book written by Douglas Adams about the making of Hitchhikers.
I feel like a post-Time War Doctor would find a way to do both.
Technically, so does Ford Prefect, but you have to read the book.
But yeah.
But no, this was Barry Letz's era, and yeah, this was a goodbye to it. That particular era of Doctor Who. As we've said, the second Doctor was, base under siege.
Mm-hmm.
This was the end to the majority of the
James Bond era.
Yeah, the James Bond era of the Doctor. And it kind of went out with a bang. So I think we've covered everything we should cover.
Would you say that Robot is the last serial where the Brigadier is a regular in the show?
I count Terror of the Zygons, which is in the same season.
Okay. And of course, then he becomes an occasional guest
Bump into,
from there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Terror of the Zygons is the goodbye to Harry Sullivan. It's kind of the goodbye to the Brigadier, who we won't see again until the Fifth Doctor era. No, there's is the android invasion in there too?
Oh yeah, when was that? I think it was Fourth Doctor. Was it the same?
It is
season?
it is the Fourth Doctor. I just don't remember if it came before or after.
Was it his first season or was that the second season? I can't remember either.
That's what I can't remember. Fourth serial of the 13.
You said Android Invasion?
Yeah.
That is the same season as Terror of the Zygons. So that's season 13. So Robot kicks off season 12.
Let's see. First serial of season 13 is Terror of the Zygons. So Android Invasion might be considered the end of the Brigadier era.
Yeah.
Okay.
But really, I don't really remember if the Brigadier actually shows up officially in there or if it's just an android duplicate.
I thought he showed up officially, but I can't remember for sure. It's been a while.
It's also that's...
And of course, you also can't trust companion lists unless you've actually watched it, because half of them will count things like Logopolis as an appearance of the Brigadier if the Doctor remembers him in the episode. So
this is the last appearance of Harry Sullivan is in the Android Invasion. The last appearance of Sergeant Benton. So that's really the last of the unit era is Android Invasion. But this is the last real regular unit invasion. After this, you've got Robot, you've got Zygons, and you've got Android Invasion. That's it, and that's 2 whole series.
And then you got half a season left with a human companion until he ditches them until Logopolis.
What do you mean, half a season? No, Leela was human.
Leela was from Earth?
She
wasn't
human, but she was
humanoid. Yeah.
She was a human. She was a human. Her group was a crashed survey team.
Oh, okay.
That crashed on this planet, but they were human originally.
Okay, I was always under the impression she was a humanoid alien.
No, not humanoid alien. They were actually humans from Earth that ended up on that planet.
Of course, I originally was mistakenly thought that she was some sort of Gallifreyan species until I realized no, she ends up there but doesn't start there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she ends up there. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how that worked because she married Andred, and as we've now seen later in the series, human and Time Lord genes just don't splice.
Or aren't supposed to.
Called a metacrisis. So that was a relationship without children, or that might be where they figured it out,
I'm
and that's a
half
scary
human
thought.
on my mother's side.
Yeah, we ignore that.
Sadly.
We ignore that. So does the series.
So is this series in general. Yeah.
We're going to count that as the Eighth Doctor being a mite confused.
Not even just the Eighth Doctor. I think the Master is a mite confused. Because the Master was saying stuff like that too.
Yep. Yeah, there were. Leela was a warrior of the Seva team, which was a hybridized name of Survey team. They were fighting their rival tribe called the Tesh, which were the blend of Techs. They were the Techs and the Survey team, and they were from Earth. They were from an Earth ship called the Morty Expedition. That crashed on an unnamed planet in the far future, and because the fact that it was multi-generations since this happened, their tech level devolved.
I'm assuming that was the face of evil.
Yes. Which I have to go and re-watch because I haven't seen that in years.
Stand back or I'll kill him with this killer jelly baby.
Yeah, I think the only Leela serials I've watched were Horror of Fang Rock and Invasion of Time.
Should really watch Talons of Wang Chiang.
I believe you're trying to get my attention.
I think Fang Rock is the one that's on Netflix.
And I have a guilty pleasure of liking The Invisible Enemy, even though it is arguably one of the worst serials from that era. It is the one where K9 first shows up. With the nucleus of the swarm. Do you remember this, Matt?
I remember the first episode vaguely, yes. I remember meeting K9 for the first time and using K9 as a defensive measure while they were trying to end the big bad.
Mm-hmm. No, I was just... that's just not the greatest episode.
Not the greatest, but it's still memorable. Not for the bad things, either.
Contact has been made.
And in one episode, we got K9's catchphrase, affirmative, and a tail wag.
Mm-hmm. I used to do a great John Leeson when I was younger.
That's because you were younger.
I could do the K9 voice just perfectly. I used to actually record myself doing the K9 voice.
I used to do the Transformers sound a lot, and also used to be able to actually do the Godzilla roar halfway decent, but that kind of ended.
So before we end up on this episode, since it was included in the beginning of the podcast, do you guys think that this episode had was part of the inspiration for Turn Left?
I think the bug idea was inspired from this.
Quite possibly.
Because I do know that Russell T loved to make references to other.
Yeah, he this was his favorite era of the show anyway.
I know he loved.
Yeah, it's quite possible that Turn Left, the whole "there's something on your back" stems from this.
I know that the thing that the bug for Turn Left came from was from Sarah Jane Adventures, so that is another lead into this.
Although that is only somewhat.
It was mostly just mentioned in name, but it's still technically there. And also the fact that, we have a very similar bug-like creature attaching itself to somebody's back to try and do something.
And both of them are sometimes visible and sometimes not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's quite possible.
I think it's a little more
Um,
than coincidence.
Actually, the Wikipedia mentions the fact that the design was influenced by the giant spider of Metabelus 3.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think it's not just speculation, it's pretty much.
Russell
Right.
T going, I'm a giddy little fan. Let me throw this reference at you guys.
Yeah, he mentions the Tricksters Brigade. Yep. You know, there was an episode in the Sarah Jane Adventure where the Trickster threatens to go after the Doctor, and this was his attempt to go after the Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Ah,
So he was finishing that promise that he made in that particular episode. So nice. I was never a big fan of the Trickster, unless you're talking about the comic book version.
Which appeared in the flat on the live version of the Flash, I believe.
Yep, as played by Mark Hamill.
Mm-hmm. Which landed
Pretty
him the
sure
job
it's
as the
what.
Joker,
Yep.
because that was what he was originally intended to play. They just couldn't get the
Yep. And
rights
then
for the
later
show for
on,
some
when they,
reason.
I think in Batman Brave and the Bold, when they used the Trickster, they hired Hamill to do it again.
Uh, are you playing? Are you wearing the Trickster costume again? I believe I am.
What's that from?
uh,
Oh,
that was one of the animated episodes. Apparently, he was taking medication to stop himself from becoming the Trickster,
uh,
mental medication, and then he's like suddenly not on it anymore. And one of
ah,
his roommates is like, "Are you in the Trickster outfit?" You know what? I think I might be.
I don't remember it too well.
I remember hearing stories. It sounded amusing. I've yet to see it though. So, I guess at this point
I
we've kind
think
of run the
we're kind of
course.
running out of what to say.
yeah. I think it's about time for final thoughts and ratings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this
We have, none
is
of us have
not.
actually mentioned if we like it at all or
Yeah.
not
So
in the
Randy first,
slightest.
since you tried to start.
This is not a bad episode. It's not the epicness that we saw at the end of the second Doctor. It's not this huge overblown production. It
Right.
doesn't introduce a new enemy like we saw, our new reoccurring enemy like we saw in 10th Planet with Hartnell. It's just, it's a decent episode of the era. It has a few bells and whistles, but mostly, those were special goodbyes to John Pertwee.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
As far not really goodbye to the Third Doctor, goodbye to John Pertwee. We
Because
promised you
it's
we would do a big multi-car chase scene. Here it is.
right.
Really, you could have aired that entire episode without the chase scene, and it probably would have cut out about an episode on the time. It's a 6 episode serial.
And that chase takes up at least half of the second episode.
Yep.
Yeah.
That being what it is, it's still a decent chase.
It's still a decent chase, and it's still a decent episode. I would
And I
probably say
really love the
4 out of
hovercraft,
5.
but anyway.
Yeah, I'd say 4 out of 5. Yeah, Pertwee couldn't drive that hovercraft.
Actually, there's a few shots of him in it. And it's
Yeah, I
moving.
know. No, what I mean is in the serial, he overshoots it and goes up onto the thing and goes out of position. He was having trouble controlling that puppy.
But he's having fun.
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying he wasn't.
And I believe also because of this episode, there are rumors abound of him accidentally crashing into a camera crew
Not hard to do in a
in a
in a
hovercraft. Yeah.
hovercraft. Yeah, watch the episode of Top Gear where they're on hovercraft. Oh my God, they're so not knowing how to control those.
Um. So I guess it goes to me then, since Bill's being quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Really like the chase scene. The spiders are probably some of the better practical effects they used in quite a while for the show, and will be for quite some time. Again, look at the monitor.
Yeah, two serials from now we have uh, caterpillars made of bubble wrap.
Yeah, and our next serial we have a guy in a plastic outfit who they try to blue screen and most of his body turns completely see through.
Yep.
Ah, blue screen, I love you. but there are days. Um, there are some interesting throwbacks to other characters. I don't think there's actually a single character that didn't at least try to do something in the entirety of the story to try and make things happen.
No,
The
everybody was
effects
used
the effects are a
fairly
little bit
well.
aged, but they are not like completely totally god awful like we would get at some points. Uh, the transformation between the third and fourth Doctor is actually pretty darn seamless at the very end.
Yeah.
And you do kind of feel for the Doctor since he realizes he has to pretty much kill himself in order to stop this current enemy threat.
Yeah.
And he gives a
Both.
nice couple of final lines to Sarah Jane before he passes. He was pretty much
So your
aware that
score?
he might regenerate, but he wasn't totally sure on it either, I think.
Right. Yeah, he needed help to do it.
hmm And yeah, it's a good send off to the Third Doctor era, but it's not overly spectacular. But I was not. I recall even tonight when I was speedrunning through it, and also when I first watched it, I don't recall once being bored. So I'd give it a solid 4.
Yeah, it's as you guys mentioned, it's a pretty good serial. I mean, it does add to the mythos, but not as much as, say, the War Games did. Uh,
Or
I would
10th
note that
Planet.
it's as a as well, yeah. 10th Planet added an enemy. It didn't add so much to the mythos of the Doctor himself, but it did definitely add to what the show would become. We should mention that as
It
a
added.
six
It did add regeneration as a concept that hadn't
true.
been
Yes.
done before.
Yeah, that's true, but it didn't really understand the concept really until this one. This is one that really says this is
This
regeneration.
this is
That one
called
was basically
regeneration. This is what it
yeah.
does.
Also, you can yeah, I'm like you can take the 10th planet without the regeneration scene easily, which is kind of how I was thinking of it as that being a separate scene. Um,
Oh, by the way, there's one thing else I should comment in here. Both of the Tibetan characters, Choji and Campo, were both played by regular Englishmen.
I'm not shocked.
Yeah, not entirely shocked
So
myself.
you can hear the horrible pidgin English that was done by Choji. Just mentioning that was the one thing that I forgot to mention that was a little bit annoying. Is Choji's really bad, broken, want to sound like Chinaman voice.
Yeah, that could get a little silly at times. Anyway, Bill.
Just mention just as a random thing, as a 6 episode serial, this is the equivalent of something. I think the only equivalent to it in the new series lengthwise would be the Utopia trilogy, um, and it's I think the second longest regeneration story of the classic Who. And I think that otherwise I pretty much agree with you guys. I'm going to say 4 out of 5.
What did you give it, Matt?
4.
So solid 4 all around. We don't even
Yep.
have to do any math tonight.
Right. We could, but it would kind of
A very solid above
defeat the point.
average. This is this is a pretty decent episode to go watch.
It's rewatchable. If you
Yeah.
if you like classic Who, it's rewatchable. If you're one of those
So-
people that can't stand dated graphics, you're not going to be listening to us talk
Right.
about classic Who anyway.
Yeah. Pretty
Yeah, and
much.
this is definitely one of those ones where the dated graphics are going to affect you more. I mean, the 10th planet, it was costuming, which you can take or lose. The War Games, I don't think. I mean, unless you have trouble with black and white, I don't think there's really anything to complain about there. Whereas here, this was cutting edge technology at the time, and as anybody who watches a lot of television or film knows, cutting edge technology does not age well.
Yeah, it will not age well in the long run.
Especially 60s and 70s. I mean, you watch the old Batman TV show, you watch old Lost in Space, you watch even old Star Trek, and you're looking
Yeah,
at some of
that's
those
definitely
effects.
OT Star Trek.
Yeah, and that's why when they released the Star Trek, they did a whole graphic revamp of a lot
Oh
of the
yeah.
special effects. Is because the fact that
I remember the first time watching it on Netflix. It was like, why is there a CGI Enterprise in a 1966? I think no, 1967. Yeah.
yeah,
Either way, why is there a CGI Enterprise in a 1960s episode?
66 might have been right because it was 66, 67, 67, 68, 68, 69.
Okay.
It's the 60s.
It was three seasons over 4 years essentially.
Right. Whereas
Damn U.S. and they're
it's
ending on a different year than they start.
kind of notable just for the point we are in the series. The first and second Doctors, I'm pretty sure each season started in the fall and ended at some point during the year, whereas from here through the remainder of Classic Who, the year that the first episode of the season is going to be the same year that the season ends in.
Mm. Well,
Actually, looking at some of these, I might be wrong. I might have been misled on that. So, actually, that's not entirely true for all of Classic.
Yeah, I was gonna say because they did Christmas specials on a few of them. Like not actual episodes, but shorts that were apparently taking place mid-season by what the costumes were, etc. Sets.
So maybe that was just Third Doctor era. Okay, no, actually, it ends this season, or it ends season 10. Well, season 10 started 30 December. Season 11 started 15 December, and it kind of creeped around. Okay, and then season 13 is where it goes back to starting in the fall.
Yeah, it's BBC will put in a series whenever they've slotted it. Doctor Who in the new era has had the same problem.
Yeah.
We used to have a March to June, July schedule. And then, we took the year that was nothing but specials. And then I think the 5th was the same schedule. 6th was the same schedule. And then 7 was broken all to hell.
And now the 8th, they're trying to push it way back so that they don't have to have that break.
Yeah, the big break, of course, there is because of the Eurovision contest in July. In June or July, the big Eurovision contest is taking.
Oh, that's that music contest, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
It took me a few minutes to remember what Eurovision was.
Yeah, it's the big music contest that's done annually nationally, or I should say continent-wise. In Europe, and it's big news.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the European Olympics of music, because it's kind of a matter of national pride who wins.
Mm-hmm.
European Idol?
Kind of, but they do have their equivalent of American Idol over there. I think it's called UK Idol.
Yeah, or something like that. Anywho, we're rambling on. Time to end.
And we'll see you guys next week.
Time
sometime.
and date to be established. Bill now actually works in our old schedule time, so
Hence
we
the
actually
reason-
have to.
That's
Yeah,
the reason
since
for
why we're.
tonight.
And this particular time slot's not going to work for me on a regular basis,
Nor
so
me.
we are going to have to put our heads together and find a time. And if we actually know the time, we'll probably post it at a time.
Right.
I hope, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, we should be posting on at least the Facebook, if not a couple other places.
Yeah. Well, we'll be discussing it in chat over the next week while we watch Legopolis, which is going to be our next episode.
Yep.
Continuing our string of ends